TitleMatchNetwork.com.
I guess what happened when you had the dirty drug test up there?
Had a dirty drug test.
Right.
My urine was dirty.
Right.
What happened? I was doing drugs and then I got tested the next day.
Right.
Why was I doing the drugs? That's what I did. That's what addicts do.
Was the road schedule really bad up there too? Around this period of time compared to when you worked in 85?
No, it wasn't as bad as 85. It wasn't as bad as 85 because we'd get days off after, a week or two. But it was just old habits, and that thing I said about after the shows is when I'm awake, that's when I'm most live is after I come back to the dressing room from a match. And I was ready to go. I mean, what are we going to do,
Right. You can't turn it off.
I couldn't at that period of time. No, I didn't know how to live with myself.
How did things wind up coming to an end for you in WWF?
I was back on doing a lot of coke, and actually what happened was that really started the ball in that direction was Sean had tested positive for steroids, and I was told about it through a friend of mine outside the business in LA. He didn't know nothing about it. And Scott Hall was, there was, the BS in the dressing room. Scott Hall was like bad-mouthing me and calling me a snitch, and what is he talking about? So I had an issue with Scott in the dressing room one night.
Physical?
It didn't get physical, but I was calling him out, which, and I had been doing what I do for 2-3 days, so I wasn't in my right mind. It was me. It was something that I should have just laughed at and kept doing what I was doing. But I reacted to it, and I called him out, had a problem. And Vince had a talk with me, and that's when he threw out about changing it to more of a babyface gimmick, which I didn't like that, and I told him that. And but he was protecting the business, I believe that decision was made because of I was so volatile, and I was kind of off the hook a little bit.
How did Vince react to everything?
To everything.
As far as the Scott Hall incident and the drug test?
Oh, well, he told me, he said, and I told him exactly what the situation was. He said, but Matt, it doesn't come to this. And I apologized to him, but, I was still very aggravated and in a reaction mode. But it's easy to do looking back, it was my fault. I reacted to something that should have been nothing.
All right. Did that whole incident lead to you being fired, or was it everything together?
No, it was a little while after this. We're in Portland, Maine, and we're staying in Boston. And after the TV taping in Portland, or was it a TV taping, a show, went back to Boston, and I was staying at the Hojo's there, and Mike McGurk and Luna and I were smoking some weed in the hotel, and Bam Bam, called Vince and told him about it. I was fired. Period.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy because back then pretty much everybody smoked in the business.
Yeah, but I was smoking in the hallway by the back door, but it was all the pressure on Vince with the lawsuit.
Right.
It wasn't a good thing.
How did you handle it as far as being fired?
Very rough. Didn't handle it well at all. Can I take a little break here?
Yeah, definitely. All right, we're back. We were talking about when you got released from WWF and how you handled it.
Yeah, not well at all. I kind of isolated and got a whole bunch of cocaine. And I got fired, and my wife of 1 year and my daughter that was a year old, they went back home from Oregon. I was in Oregon when I was fired, so I flew back to Columbus. I was living in Columbus, and my wife was in up in Michigan. She came back down. I'd been home about 4 or 5 hours. She woke me up the next morning and picked a fight with me, and so I left, and I was gone about 4 or 5 hours, and I went back, and she was gone, and to this day I haven't seen her or my daughter to this day. And she had went, and I had an account. I'd opened an account for my daughter with a bunch of money in it, and she took 20 grand and disappeared, and I had another account that I was worried that she was going to be able to attach. So I went and got all my money out of the bank, and I cashed in. I had these mutual funds, and anyway, I was walking around with 50 grand in my pockets, cash, and I locked myself in my apartment, and I bought like 3 ounces of coke and didn't leave my apartment. I didn't answer my phone, nothing for a month. Wow, it was like a nightmare. It's sad, pretty dark place I was at.
I guess when did you realize you needed serious help with all your demons and all?
Not till later. I realized I needed help, but I was always wanting to take care of it myself. The relocate, the geographical change type of thing. I had worked this independent show for a friend of mine in Western PA. We became friends, and he had a business that he says, Matt, because I was working the independent circuit on the weekends, and he said, you can work for me through the week, book yourself out of here. So I went back to Columbus, and I thought about it, and I said, well, maybe that's just what I need, So I did that, and it was all good for 3 weeks or so, and then, I made connections and stuff, and started doing what I did, and it was rough. It wasn't as bad as it was when I was in Columbus, but still, not far off. Working on the weekends and partying all through the week, and it was just hell. It was hell for me, It wasn't a life to be leading at all. Then I've got 2 young kids in Western PA, a daughter and a son that's 12 and 9, and they're there, and I keep in touch with them best I can. Their mother, was not really a person for me, but I made a lot of choices, that I shouldn't have been making, the bad choices, and she was one of them. But I've got 2 children out of it who I love, and nothing's going to change that.
Right.
But I got to live with it.
TitleMatchNetwork.com